Welcome back to another week in review. We're going to be looking at the trading week of March 31st. Going to be a bit of a crazy one, I think. There's a lot of data coming out this week. We also have the Trump tariffs on, or Liberation Day, I should say, on the 2nd, April 2nd, which is Wednesday. It's NFP week. We have a quarterly close, quarterly open. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. This is going to be probably pretty messy. I'm going to try and break this down just about how, areas that I'm looking at. I think this week largely is going to be a lot of intraday, like market generated information trades, MGI. I have a feeling that a lot of what we could be looking for could be quickly invalidated in either direction. Just because of how much is coming out and how much inflows, outflows, etc., are going to be, surrounding the first few days of this week, especially with the Trump tariffs, and then later in the week with NFP. So, word of warning: I feel like this is going to be probably pretty messy this week, and there's going to be a lot. There's going to be very limited trades that I'm really looking to take at some pretty defined levels, and I'm going to try and avoid a lot of the noise in between, just because weeks like this can get out of hand pretty fast, pretty easy to tilt when there's a lot of stuff coming out, and you get wicked out of a position and potentially starts going your way, you chase it, you get in, and then you get wicked out again, or whatever it may be. These are easy weeks to really screw it up, so gonna try not to do that. And we'll start with a quick overview of the data that's coming out this week. Monday, we don't have much. So Monday, we have 9:45. We have PMI data that comes out. Monday, the 31st, obviously is March close. So be conscious of that, especially in closing periods. Tuesday is April open. So new monthly open, new quarterly open. We have Barkin speaking at 9 a.m. We have ISR manufacturing PMI at 9:45, and 10 a.m. we have ISM, and then JOLTS. So we've got some data in the morning as well. Skipping down to Wednesday, we've got 8:15, we've got the ADP employment print. 10 a.m. we have factory orders. Wednesday, April 2nd. This is, again, I just talked about this very quickly in the open of this. This is the, quote unquote Liberation Day, the day that Trump is supposedly putting tariffs into effect. So keep that in mind. I don't know what kind of reaction we're going to get from that. I don't know if this is, we're selling into this and it's a buy the news reaction. It could very well be. We could see, once this is all out of the way, come Wednesday, we could see a very, very large market reaction either direction. The weekly expected move this week and into next week is quite high. So there's a lot of volatility being priced in, which makes total sense. So note about Wednesday there. Thursday, we have jobless claims as we normally do. We have services PMI, the final services PMI at 9:45, 10 a.m. ISM services, and we have Fed speakers in the afternoon. And then Friday, obviously, we have the NFP print. And then we have Powell speaking at 11:25 that day as well, just to throw even more shit into this. So that's great. That's fine. We'll see how that goes. Last week, just to kind of go through this fairly quickly, last week was not unexpected. I think it was, for me, I had a really good read on Friday, and I ended up completely fucking it up. I fucked up that trade really badly, and I shouldn't have. I only caught, I think, 10 points of that sell. And it was one of those ones where I missed the entry that I wanted to have with size. I initially bought the opening range break to the upside. I got clapped immediately for five points. But I had a really good read on the day with Friday. Basically, once we sold back down below the overnight lows that we tried to hold, it was pure liquidation. It was very telling. The way this was set up was very telling that the liquidation would happen. It's exactly what I was looking for. Unfortunately, I only caught a very small amount of it, and it just, it was just one of those days where I didn't want to start chasing it, and I just screwed it up. So it happens. It happens. You can have a really good read. You can have the best analysis in the world, and you just miss a trade. You don't have an entry model for it. Fortunately, I didn't. That's just how it went. So Friday kind of sucked. I didn't lose a ton of money, so that's good, but didn't make anywhere near as much as I should have. So Monday last week we had immediate continuation to the upside. This high right here, this 58.37 for 36.37 is basically the 50% retracement to the tick of the sell that we had. So if we're looking at, this is the daily time frame on ES. If we're looking at, we'll just put a fib here. If we're looking at the high to the low, it's dead center. So the S&P loves 50% retracements. This one marked a perfect lower high that also failed back below the 200-day moving average that we have right there. Very notable. And then Thursday consolidated. So we had that sell start on Wednesday. Thursday we consolidated, and then Friday ultimately is what I just talked about. Friday is what liquidated us back through. So this was telling here. So my primary read going into Thursday was after this liquidation that we had that took us back down below, took out the entire move up that we had on Monday and that overnight gap. Basically, sellers were going to be in control if we started offering this prior balance high and this prior weekly close, which we did. So again, very telling. It was a really good read. And then once we basically lost 57.20s, which is a huge level on higher time frames, which I've talked about, I feel like, for weeks. Once we lost this level, the liquidation was very clear that this was not going to hold up. So we just trapped all this inventory above us, and then there was just no bid on the ladder, and we just completely nuked the entire day. So basically from here, again, noting the caveat of this week being an absolute clusterfuck when it comes to data, pardon the language, but that's what it is. My bias really here would be, continuation to the downside as with a setup like this with a weak close to me is usually very probable. The first thing I'd be looking at here would be the POC and then settlement of Friday. I think would be the easiest. So if you're looking at about 56.20s to 56.23s, the first thing I'd watch is if overnight or Monday, if we have a little bit of a relief at all that gets stuffed into this bottom range of Friday, and if that starts to offer to get us to continuation trade down. To me, sitting right here, anything below 56.50 here is going to be a sell, in my opinion, until we see some sort of real solid low, potentially like a capitulation low, like a really nice washout with a ton of volume that comes in that gets bought back up, and we see some decent excess put into it. I think everything below this level is going to be targeting lower. So this 56.50 level basically is this range up here. So we have 2 weeks of range, 2 weeks of balance basically that was put in above it. We have all this inventory trapped above this, which can continue to liquidate below 56.50, and we'd be targeting down into the bottom range of this H contract range, as well as the 50% or the half back of this old balance range. So we'd be looking for 55.75s to 61s, and then down into this 10% corrective low at 55.09s, and potentially into the bottom range of the expected move this week, which is down into 54.80s. So we could certainly see a a higher low start to form somewhere in this range, but that's going to be entirely dependent on what comes out intraday. So I'm not opposed to the idea of this low holding. It is a poor low, so the likelihood of this getting cleaned up to me is still quite high, especially if we're staying below 56.50. But if we see some sort of massive reversal from the Trump news or probably only really the Trump news this week. If we see some massive reversal put in, then it's possible we could see that. That's going to be entirely intraday, and it's not really something I could cover in this video because I'm purely looking at levels going into this week. So for me, sellers are in control below 56.50. If we see any type of attempt to really break back above and basically get into this upper distribution of value right here into 56.50 to 56.60s. Again, if we see some sort of relief move, we could easily put in a lower high right here too. So I'd be really conscious of watching if you see a lot of buyers come in and get stuffed and then sold back down. That again is going to target the rotations down into these lower ranges. Long trades I don't like, other than potentially something big coming out with like a big reversal coming out around news. I really don't like the long trades until we're squarely bidding above 56.50s, and that could target this poor structure right here. So we could basically target if we start getting above 56.50 to 56.60s, we could potentially look on the long side to clean up these this massive set of single prints that we have that broke us down. And again, even here, we'd have to note, potentially a lower high starts to form and we get continuation back down. I really don't think buyers have any legs at all until we're back above 57.20s. So this range here is kind of like no man's land. It's, we could easily see some backfill. We could easily have intraday rotations in both directions, basically inside of this poor structure that we put in on Friday. But in order for buyers to really have any type of shot, you need to see us get back above 57.20s and break back into last week's value, which we're a million miles away from. So we need to see a stark rejection of value lower, and we need to see this liquidation range that we broke down. We need to see this bought back up, and we need to see acceptance back up above 57.20s to 57.40s. And then that's when I'd say, we could potentially have, more legs to the upside. But until we do that, really, sellers are going to be in control in the short term. And that's how I'm going to look at this week. As far as the NASDAQ, it's the exact same thing. The primary area I'd be looking at this week would be 19,600s. So again, these are the lows of the prior balance range that we broke, or a prior balance range that we broke down from, as well as this upper distribution of value that we have on Friday. So again, what you'd really need to see here, from a short side perspective, is if we have any type of relief, first thing you'd watch is any type of relief move that gets back up into Friday's POC, up into 19,450s basically. And if this fails up here, again, the market's extremely weak. And then we'd be looking for the rotation back down to backfill this area down into here, into 300s, and then into 170s to 140s, into this RTH weekly low and ETH weekly low. Below this, I really don't think there's anything that would hold a bid until basically down into 18,700s to 18,650s. I don't think there's much here. I think this would continue to liquidate, and we might get some sort of low that forms down here if this market continues to be extremely weak. From a long side perspective, same thing. You'd really want to see bids really squarely above 19,600s. You'd want to see us, start backfilling this poor structure. And it's the same thing as ES. You have to be careful in this range because this is a little bit like no man's land, because you're going to have, even with intraday rotations to the upside, it could still be extremely easy to form a lower high up in this range and then continue that downside. So just don't be buying highs and getting trapped if you're trying to play the long side of this. You really want to manage that, and you really want to be careful on the long side again until we're really back up above this 19,900 to 20K range, and we start trying to climb back up last week's value. Again, we're very far outside last week's value. It's a pretty stark breakdown that we've had, and it's a weak close. So favoring shorts, basically, as long as we're below 19,600s, we could target lower, potentially a lot lower. And then the caveat of, potentially some huge reversals that we see on market generated information this week. That's entirely possible. Friday was very much an outlier of a day. Triple distribution trend day down with a break outside of average true range. Anytime that we have a break outside of ATR levels and hold and consolidate and hold outside ATR levels, it's usually going to be an outlier of a day, and we're usually going to close it at an extreme, which we did. So things to note here. This would have been an account killer type of day as well, I think. To me, I as much as I screwed up the sell on this day, it was also one of those days where, I kind of preserved my mental and preserved physical capital, not trying to buy every single goddamn dip that went down here, because you really have to understand that when we start breaking, this should be structure, right? So we have prior balance ranges, but we have all this inventory that's trapped above. So once we really start breaking back below these higher time frame levels with all these buyers that were soaking all up here, the unwinds that can happen on days like this are very, very nasty. And when you start to see, a complete rejection of prior day lows, we had, a 30-second opening range that broke back above and then immediately got stuffed and rotated back down. At least from my experience, when we see an opening range break in one direction, fail, and then start traversing the other side of that range, a lot of the time that's early trend indications. And then obviously, that's exactly what it turned into. And it was a beautiful liquidation day. that I just didn't play well and I didn't catch enough of. So that is what it is. But I think this week it's going to be tricky. I'd say be really careful, scale down quite a bit. Unless that's not how you trade, unless this is where you thrive, then, go for it. Throw everything you have at it. Just don't blow up. I hope this video helped. I'm going to try and do kind of like a midweek update going forward as well. Maybe that'll help people. Maybe it won't. But hopefully this helps. If you do find it helps, please like the video. Please subscribe. We're getting close to 100 subs, which is really cool. I never thought I'd even get here, to be honest. So that's neat. Appreciate your time. Thank you.